Welcome to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. Later in the show, Pam Yabeny will tell us about the American Indian Studies program at Arizona State University.
I'm Susan Levy, and with us today is Dr. Mona Scott Figueroa, residential faculty of the American Indian Studies and Sociology program at Mesa Community College. The American Indian Studies program offered by MCC, or Maricopa Community Colleges and Mesa Community College, allows students to study the cultures, histories, and contemporary experiences of Indigenous peoples in the Southwest. And hello and welcome to Native Talk Arizona, Dr. Scott Figueroa. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Susan. And you can call me Mona.
Okay. Well, thank you. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, your background, and what you do at MCC.
Okay. Well, I grew up the product of divorced parents. So my dad lived in South Central LA, my mom in Northern Arizona on the Navajo Nation, and in a border town community. And so I grew up in these two worlds, moving back and forth every year, multiple times. And culture jumped out to me, like the differences in culture, like Black culture, urban culture, rural culture, Navajo culture. And so I was always, I guess my senses were heightened to cultural differences. I went to school in both Arizona and California. I went to the University of Southern California, which was in my neighborhood growing up. So I got my bachelor's degree from USC, and then I came back to Arizona and got my master's and doctorate at ASU in sociology and education, respectively. And then I started teaching at Mesa Community College. And one of the things I noticed at MCC is that even though we had this huge Native population, there were no American Indian Studies classes being taught. And so my colleague Manny Pino at Scottsdale Community College encouraged me to start teaching the classes that were cross-listed with sociology. And so that's how I started teaching American Indian Studies. And I've been trying to grow the program ever since, because Mesa Community College has the largest population of Native students. We have 1,300 Native students at MCC, and at our height, I think we had 1,600. So we have a large student population. These courses are made for them, and so I am dedicating the end of my career basically to focusing on growing this program, meeting the needs of our Native population at MCC, and really just trying to empower students.
So I know Mesa Community College, or MCC, that you have the American Indian Institute there. What do they do? How does that intersect with the classes that you teach, and what other programs are available for the students?
All right, that's a great question. I'm trying to work more closely with the American Indian Institute. They are really the face of Mesa Community College for Indigenous students. Students can go there for advising. They can go there for mentoring. We house our intertribal student organization out of the American Indian Institute. So our advisors there are Native American, and they really do a great job of creating this family-like environment for Native students. So they have a wealth of cultural programming. Like right now, they just launched their Seeds of Wisdom mentorship program. So seasoned college students they take workshops to learn how to be good mentors, to understand their culture and identity, and then they mentor incoming Indigenous students at MCC. And so it's a wonderful program to just help new students get familiar with the college experience, but it also helps the students who've been here a little longer develop new skills and take development courses. It's a great opportunity. And the American Indian Institute does a good job of bringing Native students together to socialize and to engage in activities and to work together. And so the American Indian Institute really is probably the most important component for supporting Native students at MCC.
And then, so do people automatically enroll with the American Indian Institute, or is it just something that they would stop by when they're at campus, or how would students find out about that?
Yeah, so if a student had no clue how to start, they could walk directly over to the American Indian Institute, and someone would be there to help them get enrolled. to talk to them about the courses, the whole process. So yes, if somebody is completely new, they can definitely just walk in and get some help. Most students, though, they fill out an enrollment form online and get admitted. And then once they identify if they're Native, they'll get emails that say, hey, we have this American Indian Institute program, you can stop by. But the American Indian Institute is there for Native student success. So everything from learning the college, getting advisement, getting tutoring, mentoring, even scholarships. There are certain scholarships that organizations and companies partner with the American Indian Institute to provide, and they provide it.
And I know they also have events. I know they've got Orange Shirt Day and Indigenous Peoples Day, and I know they do like a lot of great things. And they have the powwow in the spring.
Right. Yeah. So the powwow is really exciting because it was 20 years since we had one, and we started bringing them back about 6 years ago when I'm trying to remember her name. Can't remember her name off the top of my head right now, but we brought it back, and I love it because it lets the community know that we're here and there are Native people here and faculty and staff, and so I think it makes us Native friendly to have that powwow. But yes, pretty much all the major cultural events come out of the American Indian Institute. So in October, for Indigenous Peoples Day, they have planned an entire conference from 9 to 4 p.m. And I think they have something like 10 speakers that will be here. They're providing lunch. And it really is just a day of empowerment and understanding and learning, and also just gathering together to be amongst each other. And the conference title is, or their theme is Indigenous Excellence in Action. So there will be Native students talking about their experience at MCC.
It sounds like it's going to be a great event, and I think everything that Talia and everybody else at the American Indian Institute puts on is always well attended, and they're great events. So we definitely encourage people to check it out and attend. But I do want to ask you, tell us a little bit about the American Indian Studies program at MCC that you do.
Okay, so the American Indian Studies program is the academic side. So while the American Indian Institute is student services, it focuses on supporting the students. Students are ultimately at MCC to get an education. And so that's where I come in. So we offer an American Indian Studies certificate, which is 15 credits. And that usually amounts to about four to five classes. So you can get an academic certificate in American Indian Studies, or you can get an Associate of Arts with an emphasis in American Indian Studies. And I encourage students to take American Indian Studies because the classes they're interdisciplinary. So we cover sociology, history, anthropology, art, literature. So it's an interdisciplinary format. The American Indian Studies courses that we teach at MCC, we center the Native voice. And so we really challenge, pretty much this history of looking at Native people with the white gaze as stereotypes or as objects or as cultural artifacts. And so we really work to teach students about Indigenous voices that are out there in every field that are contemporary and that are doing positive things, because as you know, Indigenous people's history and cultures are vibrant and rich and thriving and alive and ever changing, and that's the perspective we want to take. And so our classes are really focused on empowering Native students, but also giving them this foundation of, a more complete history of American history, and not this, not this look of history with Indigenous people on the side. And so we really do center the Indigenous experiences and Native voices, and the focus is really on helping students to gain those critical thinking skills and a sense of empowerment and a sense of pride in who they are, and pretty much skills to continue moving forward in their educational journey.
So if somebody's coming in, let's say they're going to be a freshman at MCC, then they would take, I know you said there's a certificate for 15 hours. So if I was interested in education or nursing, I could just take that and then take a couple classes when I'm working on my associates and then finish with the 15 hours for the certificate. Is that correct?
You could do that. You could definitely be any major you want, because one of the 3 credits that's required for the academic certificate is English 101, and you have to take that no matter what your major is. And so basically you take 3 classes in American Indian Studies and you will have the certificate if you already have another major. So that's a perfect example.
Oh, cool. Okay. So what classes do you generally teach?
So I usually teach Intro to American Indian Studies, and this is pretty much the first class that Hoop of Learning students take. And Hoop of Learning students are Native high school students in the Mesa area. They are on a scholarship to take classes while they're still in high school, to take classes at MCC and earn college credit. So by the time they graduate from high school, some students have completed their associate's degree. Most students complete a year of college in the program. But I teach Intro to American Indian Studies, which is really just a survey of contemporary issues and challenges and solutions within Indian country. I also teach Sovereign Indian Nations, which focuses on understanding what sovereignty is and what nations across the U.S. are doing to exercise their sovereignty. I also teach American Indian law, which is a really challenging class for students. But to understand the state of Native nations today, you have to go back and look at those historic legal precedents. And so while it's a challenging class, it's also an illuminating class for students. That class, I think, is one of those classes that creates this aha moment in students where they're like, oh, this is why this is like this. So those are the primary classes that I teach. And then Larry Smith, who you may be familiar with, he's a radio host for American Indian Airwaves in California. He teaches our American Indian Religions class. And he's been teaching with us for at least a decade. And then Arlene Old Elk teaches our Navajo government class. And that Navajo government class is also the course that a lot of Navajo students take to meet the requirements for the Chief Manuelito Scholarship, which is the big scholarship that the Navajo Nation offers.
I was just going to ask that if that qualified for that.
It does.
So who comes up with the classes? Is this something you decide, or the university, or the faculty that are teaching this?
So faculty, we can determine what classes we want to teach from a course bank. So Mesa is one of the 10 Maricopa County community colleges. So faculty across the 10 colleges create the curriculum together. So we create the curriculum, it's in a course bank, and as long as you meet the minimum requirements to teach in that field, you can teach any class in that course bank as long as it's current. So the course, what we offer is usually determined by the students that we have and what they're interested in. And so Mesa Community College and Glendale Community College, because we're the larger colleges, we teach the most American Indian Studies classes, but all the Maricopa colleges teach American Indian Studies classes. And it really just depends on our student population's interest in those courses and what classes we offer. And so we used to teach the American Indian or the Navajo government class every semester, but enrollment has dwindled. And so we're teaching it once a year, and South Mountain Community College is also teaching it as well. So students do have options, and oftentimes we teach those classes online because we know that high school students are taking them from different areas in the Valley to meet that scholarship requirement.
And Hoop is just in Maricopa County, correct? The Hoop of Learning?
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, just about every one of our colleges offers or has a Hoop of Learning program. Okay.
So this might be like asking about your favorite child, but do you have a favorite class that you teach in American Indian Studies?
That's really hard because, the content, it's not like, in our dominant culture curriculum. Everything is divided. History is divided from English, which is divided from sociology and anthropology. But all the American Indian Studies courses, it overlaps for me. So I just feel like I'm teaching about our people and our history in every class. So I don't think I have a favorite, but I do know that it's fun teaching the American Indian law class, just because students, they struggle, and they have those big eyes, and the words that I use the first day of class, and then again that aha moment where they're like, I get it. So just in terms of transformation of the student, I think that American Indian law class might be just the most interesting for me to teach, just because of the students, how they change over the course of the semester.
So in talking about that, have you seen a lot of change in students, like pre-COVID and after post-COVID?
Oh, yes. I think as college faculty, there are these waves. So there'll be a wave that'll last for 6 or 7 years, and then we'll see a change in the student, and that wave could be, another 6 or 7 years. So actually, I'm excited to say that this semester is the start of a new wave, and students are excited to be in the classroom. They want to learn, and they engage me in conversation. So when I ask a question, it just doesn't fall and lay flat. Like, students will actually engage, and I don't have to say this is not rhetorical. So yeah, I have been seeing that students want, like, they really want to be here in school, and it's not like their parents are forcing them to do it.
Okay, that's good news.
Yes, it is.
So do you have a favorite success story? I know you've been teaching for a while. Anything that comes to mind that kind of like, this has all been worth it?
You know what? I have two of them, and one with the Hoopa Learning students and one with a former student from over a decade ago. So you may be familiar with Millicent Pepillon.
Oh, yeah.
She is
Yep.
Yeah. So Millicent was my student as an undergrad, and she took a course with me, American Indian Studies, and I remember she told me this story, and I couldn't remember exactly the story, but I do remember, what happened. But so students came to class, and they were supposed to have read, and they didn't, and I got upset with them, and I made them open their book, and we read, and I told them how important it was to read and get this material. How else are we going to have the conversation? Because during our conversation, that's where the learning happens. And so she said that lit a fire under her butt. She said, she was like, Professor Scott at the time, she's like, you were serious and you cared. And I was like, I'm going to do better. And so she did. And so she ended up getting a PhD in American Indian Studies. And now she's the outreach coordinator and tribal liaison for the Arizona Secretary of State's office. And she's got a PhD in American Indian Studies. And I'm so proud of her. And to know that I made that difference by forcing them to read in class, it's just because, and I stressed how important this was for their life and their future and their journey and their communities, and I think once you connect the content to students' lives, I think it makes a difference, because American Indian Studies is just that. Almost actually 100% of Native students who come to MCC, and I ask them, okay, why are you here? They say they want to get their education so that they can give back to their communities. There's no other population, and by race or political affiliation, that I can say, why are you here? And 100% say, to give back to my community. And so once I can make that connection of these classes to their community, students are all in. The other success story is my Hoopa Learning students from summer of last year. So I took them to, U of A has their indigenizing curriculum, their Indigenous Teacher Preparation Program. So they had a conference last summer during the same time I had my Hoopa Learning students in the summer. So I took them to the conference. They engaged with the teachers, or the students who were becoming teachers. And there were also elders like Chile Yazi from the Navajo Nation presenting on indigenous learning and knowledge. And there were other elders from Tonaʻatam and Gila River. There's a diversity of elders and community leaders and community members, and also the Native students who were training to be teachers. And so my high school students got to engage with all those different people, and they even presented out at the end of the conference when, the moderator said, "Hey, does anyone want to talk about their experiences?" And my students, these young, usually timid high school students, they spoke in this room of 200 people and talked about how they felt welcome, that this space was one of the few spaces that they felt like they could be themselves and they could speak their truth. I mean, it was amazing. And I mean, it was so amazing. I couldn't even get through all the students speaking. I just started bawling because, you plant these seeds in the students and then you just believe that they'll grow. And they were growing, and they were talking about how important it was for them to be in this space that centered Indigenous knowledge and people, and to look for ways to integrate what we're learning into our communities. So it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful, and I will never forget that summer for as long as I live.
See, and that's why you've been teaching.
That's why I've been teaching.
That's because you've made a difference.
I actually got to see the growth. Usually I just believe that they'll grow.
And the difference that you've made. Look at Millie. So, yep.
I know.
Pretty impressive.
I know. She's awesome. Yeah, she's awesome.
She is awesome. I've known her a long time. She is awesome. So we're almost out of time, but I want to find out, how can our listeners find out more information about the American Indian Studies classes at MCC, learn more about your classes, and how can they contact you?
So I am like a dinosaur when it comes to social media. I do have social media. I'm hardly ever on it. So they can send me an email at mscott@mesacc.edu. Evans and my first name, Mona, SCOTT, my last name before I got married, at mesacc.edu. If they just want to look at the Mesa website, mesacc.edu, they can always type in American Indian Studies. They'll find me, or they'll find the program, which also will lead to me. So even if they just go on the Mesa Community College website at mesacc.edu, they can always find me. So yeah.
Okay. And I hope some listeners take time out, check the website, reach out to you, and enroll in those American Indian Studies classes. I've heard amazing things, and people love them and say you're a great professor. So yeah. So thanks for coming on today.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, and I hope people start enrolling at MCC in those classes.
Yes, that's what we want. We want people to get this education and this knowledge, because it really does challenge a lot of what they've been taught in dominant education. And for Native people, it really is empowering, and I think it's healing, because education oftentimes isn't healing. But I think American Indian Studies classes are.
Next on Native Talk Arizona, Pam Yabeny will tell us about the American Indian Studies program at Arizona State University. Support for KRDP 90.7 FM comes in part from Native Health, with 2 locations in Phoenix, 4041 North Central Avenue, Building C, near the corner of Central Avenue and Indian School Road, and at 2423 West Dunlap Avenue. Native Health is also located in Mesa at 777 West Southern Avenue, near the corner of Southern Avenue and Extension Road. Native Health provides primary medical, dental, behavioral health, WIC, and wellness services for the urban Native American community. For more information, call 602-279-5262 or visit our webpage at nativehealthphoenix.org.
Welcome back to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. I'm Susan Levy, and with us today is Pam Yabeny. and she is from the American Indian Studies program at Arizona State University, which emphasizes the latest research impacting indigenous communities across the U.S., which is grounded in traditional knowledge and perspectives of American Indian peoples and organizations. And so Pam is here. She's an American Indian Studies instructor at ASU. And welcome. We're super excited that you're here and that you're going to tell us more about what you do. So welcome.
Thank you.
So before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and your background.
Okay. Well, I am Diné Navajo. Traditionally, I am from Cove, Arizona. However, I grew up mainly in the New Mexico kind of Gallup area. And, I think that I was thinking about how education has been such an influence in what I do currently in my entire life. And I think that it all started with my mom, was a teacher. She was an educator. And so I've always wanted to have something connected to education. And initially, I actually graduated with my bachelor's degree thinking that I wanted to be a school counselor, an elementary school counselor. And after that, came down to the Tempe area and graduated with my master's of counseling degree from ASU. And I actually started to work as a school counselor in a couple of schools, but my last position was grant funded. And when the funding ended, that pushed me to seek, another opportunity. And I thought, let me try higher ed. And so I looked into the Maricopa community colleges. I looked into Arizona State University, and actually found a position with Maricopa community colleges working with what they call an early outreach program. And so that's when I started with the community college district and working. I was there for a couple of years and actually had the opportunity to teach one of their courses that comes out of the counseling department. And I really loved that experience. So at some point, I just decided I need to go back and really look into a program that was connected to indigenous people, and how could I learn more about our history, policy, laws, issues, so that I'm more informed. And I came back to ASU, got my master's in American Indian Studies, decided to pursue a PhD program, and so I was accepted into the University of Arizona's PhD program in American Indian Studies. And so while I was down there, I was trying to think of a way that I could still be connected to not only the community college, but here at ASU. And so I started to teach again, but with the focus of being, primarily American Indian Studies. And thankfully, in maintaining a relationship with the folks here at ASU, I was asked to fill in and teach a American Indian Studies course, and that's really how it all began. I taught one course one semester, then I was asked to return, and then next thing you know, there was the opportunity to apply for a full-time instructor. So in terms of here at ASU, I've been a full-time instructor. I'm going on my third year right now. And prior to that, I was part-time for probably about 3 years. So, and I love it. I really enjoy what I'm doing, and I think it connects to me on a personal level, but also on a professional level. And I'm just really enjoying my experience here.
You had quite a career path so far. So I'm going to back up a little bit. And can you tell me a little bit, so what is the American Indian Studies program at ASU? Is it at Is it online? Is it in person? Is it only at one campus if it's in person? How do people apply? Can you tell us more about it?
Sure. So we are primarily based here at the Tempe campus, and we do offer classes both online and in person. Majority of the classes that are taught in person are taught here on the campus, but I do know of a few times where some of our professors would go down to the downtown campus and teach from there. So there's been that scenario. I teach primarily undergraduate courses, and so with ASU, there's also an online university, and so we have classes that are offered online within that that fall under that umbrella, and those classes are 8 weeks, 7 to 8 weeks. And then we have online classes that are offered just within the university, and those usually run the full semester. So AIS courses are offered under both. And as of right now, there's no official AIS online program, but we do offer those courses online, if that makes sense.
It does. So do you have to apply? I know at some of the schools at ASU, you have to apply to get in. Do you have to apply to get into American Indian Studies? And is it a major, and is it a bachelor's, master's, PhD? How does that all work?
Here at ASU, we do have a bachelor degree program. So if you do want your bachelor's degree in AIS, you do have to apply. We also have 2 master level degrees, and you have to apply. I believe we have a minor, so you could minor in AIS as well. Let's see. In terms of the master's program, one is a master's in AIS with a focus of Indigenous rights and social justice, and the other one is a master's with the focus of tribal leadership and governance. You know, some of our classes, a lot of students take because they also just kind of fall under some general requirements. So like when you're pursuing, a bachelor's degree, you have some general requirements just as a general student that need to be met. And there are a few of our classes that meet those requirements. So for instance, I have a lot of students that take our Intro to American Indian Studies course. And they come from, a variety of backgrounds in terms of their degrees. And that's also really interesting because we do get some students who have not declared a degree program, and when they take a couple of ours, they recognize, you know what, this is actually something that I'm really interested in, and then they go through the process of declaring for, the AIS program for a bachelor's degree, if that makes sense.
So when you declare,
I'm hoping I'm not confusing.
No. I haven't been at ASU in a long time, or I was a student there. But so for AIS, you have to. So if you declare a major, so you have to apply. Is it competitive, or do you just say I'm declaring AIS as my major?
I am not familiar with what that process is. If so, I think there's a scenario of, if you're an interested student and you know that you want to go and get your bachelor's degree in AIS, then when you're going through the application process, that's something that you would, mark in your application. And I believe part of that would come to our department versus already being a student that's been accepted, an undergraduate student that's been accepted, and then whatever the process is to declare your major within American Indian Studies.
Well, we work with a lot of students here, and we have a lot of interns and volunteers from ASU, and I have heard the most tremendous things about the American Indian Studies program and also your classes as well. But people always talk about that and how they really feel like when they've taken a class or two that they really end up switching over and then declaring that as their major. But I always wondered what kind of employment opportunities would be available for students if they're receiving a degree in American Indian Studies. Is that like a general degree or would they be looking? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? What kind of employment could they seek?
I always tell my students, if you're interested in pursuing a career that is connected to Indigenous people and Indigenous organization, students, business, anything that's connected to, tribal or, just American Indians, having a degree in American Indian Studies is going to help you tremendously. And it's mainly because I've learned that there are so many people that are unaware of our history, our issues, policy, law, all of it is kind of tied together, our philosophy. And so, when having that knowledge, and then if they go into I just had a student that was telling me that he went back to work for his tribe, and even taking a federal Indian policy course helped him so much in terms of what he was doing within the office that he was working with for his tribe. So there's so many opportunities out there in various, areas. For example, like I was saying, with business and the economy, not a lot of people know about even how gaming has impacted our tribal communities. But this is some of the information and insight that they would get as a student having taken one of our courses.
So which classes are you teaching this semester?
This fall semester, I just finished up my intro to American Indian Studies. That was 7 weeks, so half the semester. I'm also teaching an American Indian Sovereignty and Courts course, Federal Indian Policy and Law, and Indigenous films.
Ooh, that one sounds interesting. They all sound interesting, yeah. But that one also sounds really interesting. Am I allowed to ask, which is your favorite class, or is that like asking your favorite child? I probably can't ask that, right?
Yes. I really do enjoy all of them.
Good answer.
I'm kind of torn between, I'm kind of torn between teaching in person because that allows me to connect to the students, one-on-one there in person, and we can really dive into various types of discussion, or I can address questions right there. But the online, I was a little, I guess in a way intimidated when I first started teaching online classes. But now I just love all of the opportunity to really try to have various techniques, various strategies in which to really just kind of engage the students online, come up with some creative assignments for them. And so that has been actually a joy too. So that's why, yeah, you're right. I can't have a favorite child. I won't.
Okay. So do you come up, if you're looking at the spring semester or next summer, I know the summer sessions, do you come up with the ideas and say hey, I'd like to teach a class on gaming law or I don't know, whatever it might be, or does the university decide? Who decides which classes, and then kind of is there a process? I'm sure there is, right?
So when a student is enrolled in a degree program, there's required courses that have already been pre-decided before I even came into the picture. So, for example, Intro to AIS is a required course. So those are some of the required courses, but then you do have some that are offered that would probably count as an elective. And I have been, really busy with the required courses that I covered, that I actually just got the opportunity to request to teach a urban issues course for this spring. And so that's going to be really interesting. I'm currently putting everything I need together in terms of the curriculum. But that's going to be offered as, and it would be considered an elective. There's also some courses that obviously need to be courses that are going to be offered that are in our course bank, but they haven't been offered in a while. So there's a list that we can kind of revisit and see if maybe this needs to come back up again. As far as any other courses, there does need to be some sort of like an authorization process that it goes through. And so if there's something new, then that whole process would be undertaken with the person that's interested in teaching it, going through our department, and so on and so forth. So does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. But I think the urban one sounds pretty interesting. So, like, what kind of, and I don't know if you've thought about it or what kind of things are you going to cover during the urban one, the Urban American Indian Studies class in the spring?
We're definitely going to touch on historical aspects of it, but what I'm also looking to do is really either, and I probably could employ both, but I definitely want to bring in some folks from our local areas, because I think, there's such great resources that we could tap into. For example, like Native Health or the Phoenix Indian Center. But I also want to encourage the students to possibly do some group projects in which they do some research through in terms of looking into other major areas, urban areas, and really get some insight into some urban programs that are being offered. Like, I know Tucson has a center, LA has a center, San Francisco, so sort of on a more national level. And that'll kind of give us an idea too in terms of are some of the issues that are being addressed, are they similar, or do they differ? Even the indigenous nations and communities in that area, we could find out more information about them. So there's a lot that I have a lot of ideas to kind of explore.
Yeah, and so Walter Murillo, our CEO, he is also part of National Council of Urban Indian Health. So that would be
nice.
That would be a very cool intersection to have in there to talk about like all the different urban Indian health programs in the country, intersecting that with like the Indian centers at each place, so like Tucson Indian Center or Naka and Flag. But yeah, okay. I think that one sounds really interesting. Not that the other ones don't, but that one sounds really interesting. So, COVID was here a few years ago. How's your teaching style changed, like pre-COVID, COVID, now? Any differences?
That's a good question. At least for me personally, majority of the courses that I was teaching were in person. So when we had to go into quarantine, so this was my experience. So I'm teaching an in-person class, and then we had to, go into quarantine. So I went from teaching a classroom full of students to actually teaching one or two that decided to attend in person, but they were social distancing, and then everyone else was online. And that was, I had to really learn quickly in terms of how to conduct activities even in an online manner. How do I separate them into groups? How do I encourage, even engage them and encourage them? A lot of the students didn't want to turn their cameras on. So how do you make sure they're even present? All of these different concerns popped up. And then we had to, switch over to fully online. and some of the courses you still have to teach in person but online versus just having all of the information, and they go in online and do the work essentially on their own. But I think going through that experience sort of opened the door for me to really explore me teaching more online courses.
I had a lot of friends during COVID who were from university all the way down to primary grades. And I know they had a really hard time switching over, learning the platforms, getting students engaged. And so I am sure it was really challenging. But I do have to ask, do you have a favorite success story out of all the kids, not kids, but out of all the individuals that you've taught?
Oh gosh, I don't have like a specific one, but it always surprises me when after the semester wraps up, I get, an email or some sort of feedback that, and this could be from a student who just, needed to take a general course to fulfill, one of their general requirements, and they're not necessarily majoring in AIS. And I've also had students who were finishing up their program in AIS, but I always get some sort of statement indicating, how impactful the course was. And I'm just like, yes. Sometimes, I question myself, did I do well? But when I get that sort of feedback, then I know I'm on the right path. And so that just I think I'm going to maybe start a bulletin board of all of these positive statements. That way, when I'm having a rough time, I can just look up there and just be, just know that I'm supported and I'm doing good.
You are, and I think that a lot of times you don't see the ripple effect. And, maybe 15 years later, people will think back and say, you know what, Pam was like an awesome teacher. And, like you said about the gentleman who was working for the tribe who thought that he had learned all of that at ASU's American Indian Studies program, and what a difference that makes. And sometimes I know it doesn't come back right away, but I know you're making a huge difference and doing a tremendous job. So if any of our listeners out there, if they want information on ASU's American Indian Studies program, how do they find that? And then are you amenable to giving out your email or contact information so people could contact you and learn more about AIS, ASU, and your classes?
Sure. So I would definitely encourage individuals, if they're interested in American Indian Studies here at ASU, to go online. And the website is americanindian.asu.edu. And there is one specific person that I encourage that they connect to, and her name is Jenica Fulwilder. First name is spelled Jennica, and her last name is spelled Fulwilder. She is an advisor with our department, but she also does some recruitment. And so she works with a lot of students who are interested in AIS, and so they contact her and ask, what's the application process like? What are the classes like? And so she gives them a lot of insight. Her phone number is 480-727-7056. And her email address is jenica.fulwilder@asu.edu. And if they go on the website, there are various headings on top of the web page. If they click on people and staff, that they will find her and her information there.
Under the asu.edu website?
The AmericanIndian.asu.edu website, yes.
Okay. But if they also land at asu.edu, they could also type in American Indian Studies, right?
In the search
bar?
where there's like a little, they can type in American Indian Studies. It'll take them to the same page.
Cool. So, and if somebody wanted to apply online, it's the same process, or talk to her about that, she'd be able to help with that also,
Right.
answering what's online. Okay. Well, we really, really appreciate your time today. I know you're very busy with all your classes and students. I've learned a lot. I think you've piqued my interest on the urban class in spring. I hope our listeners are interested in checking out ASU's American Indian Studies program for the degree programs, and then also the general studies classes, and then connecting with you, Pam. So thank you so much.
Not a problem. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm glad that we were able to connect and really just talk. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and 90.7 FM KRDP. Our executive producer is Susan Levy. Sound engineer is Javier Quiroga. We hope you will tune in again next week. If you have any questions, please reach us at nativetalkaz@listen2krdp.com.